finishing up their pre-breathe before eventually venturing into the vacuum of space. Working with NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Suni Williams in preparation for today, their spacewalk support. They were assisted into their suits some time ago by Butch Wilmore for spacewalk support, as well as Don Pettit, who you saw in that field of view just a few moments ago, snapping a couple of extra photos, and they will be inside the space station monitoring from that vantage point, as well as teams here on the ground. And taking a look at the statistics going into today's spacewalk for Nick Hague, this will be his fourth spacewalk. Previously conducted his 3 for a total of 19 hours and 56 minutes. And for Commander of Expedition 72, Suni Williams, this will be her 8th, as her previous 7 would have her go at 50 hours and 40 minutes. This is the 273rd spacewalk in support of International Space Station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades, and the first spacewalk of 2025, and the second for Expedition 72. After the pre-breathe, the 2 astronauts will be removed from their attachments on the walls there of the equipment lock inside the Quest airlock of the space station. Their safer units, or the simplified aid for EVA rescue needed in case of emergencies, will then be attached, and that's where Butch Wilmore and Don Pettit will come in and help them assist before eventually moving into the crew lock, which you see back behind you, where the 2 astronauts will venture in. The hatch will close, and then the decompression of that hatch to meet up with the pressure of the vacuum of space will then equalize before the crew can then egress and begin their day's journey. For the team here on the ground inside Mission Control Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room, they are led today by Flight Director Nicole McElroy, as the team on the ground currently undergoing a handover period, as Nicole will be the Spacewalk Flight Director for today's EVA. Her and her Vista flight team will also be joined alongside NASA astronaut Jessica Whitner, who will be the spacewalk communicator, and also joined alongside by Aki Hoshide for Capcom and all other communications inside the International Space Station. And this EVA team has been active this morning, again experiencing the handover period in which Nicole McElroy and her Vista flight team will take over and prepare the crew for the rest of their journey, as their pre-breathe continuing to roll on along for a little over an hour now. And during this pre-breathe technique, you'll see the astronauts moving around, moving their arms. They were going through regimented exercise routines earlier, just lifting their legs, and to accelerate the body's absorption of pure oxygen, and again, to get rid of and remove nitrogen from their system to avoid decompression sickness, similar to what divers go through when moving up from deep depths to the surface, where you move from a high pressure to a low pressure, similar to what's experienced here at the high pressure inside the International Space Station, and then eventually moving out to no pressure, the vacuum of space. For this US EVA number 91, taking a look at the planned tasks that are on the docket for both Nick Hague and Suni Williams. The priority task that Nicole McElroy and team issued during a press briefing earlier in the week was to remove and replace the rate gyro assembly. That is number 2, and that is what measures the angular motion of the International Space Station about each of its 3 axes. There are 2 rate gyro assemblies on board just inside the main truss figure, and that was last installed back in September of 2009 during the shuttle era aboard STS-128 and International Space Station Assembly Mission number 17. So again, most of these tasks for removal and replace are R&R, as you may hear throughout the broadcast today, and that is for that maintenance and upgrades. The second task that will be focused on will be to remove and replace the Harmony Zenith, or space-facing planar reflector that is close to the port for visiting vehicles. And that planar reflector is a part of the docking procedures for visiting vehicles that come and go from the International Space Station. Currently, the Crew 9 SpaceX Dragon is attached to this location, and this is where they will be removing and replacing that reflector, which sends signals to and from the visiting vehicles as they are on approach to the International Space Station. Also, during this time frame, we will see one of the astronauts install install patches for the NICER payload, the Neutron Star Interior Composition Explorer patches, and that is an X-ray telescope that studies neutron stars, black holes, and other phenomena. This telescope has thermal shields over their detectors to prevent sunlight from interfering with the X-ray measurements. However, over time, they have been damaged, and that has allowed sunlight to leak into the instrument during daylight hours. So during this EVA, they will have installing wedge-shaped patches that you will see throughout, and we will update you throughout the course of the broadcast on that progress to help patch up those areas to remove unwanted sunlight from entering that experiment and that X-ray telescope, and to allow it to resume during daylight operations. And the final task for today's EVA is to prepare the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer patch panel for upgrades, and this will be a part of a sequence of tasks to upgrade that overall panel and overall experiment moving forward. And for them, that'll be a one step of many in the coming future, but that will be the final task that the two astronauts will focus in on. So again, if you are just joining us, good morning from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room as we are looking inside the equipment lock. And this is a live view of Mission Control Houston, and there you can see someone in the center of your screen in the black blazer, Nicole McElroy and her Vista flight team getting settled in for today's EVA activities. So with those four tasks on tap for Nick Hague and Suni Williams, we have ourselves an animation that would help illustrate better the actual step-by-step procedures and what it will look like throughout today's broadcast with an animation of today's EVA.
This is the planned tasks for the RGA and reflector EVA. EV1 exits the airlock first wearing red stripes, and EV2 exits second wearing white stripes. The first task in this EVA is to remove and replace RGA2 in the S0 truss location. EV1 will be working on the back side of the truss. They will carry the new RGA to the worksite, remove the bolts and connectors, and then pull the old RGA out. EV2 will be positioned inside the truss to assist with removing the electrical connections and the bolts. They will then put the new RGA in place. Once the RGA R&R is complete, EV2 will move to the Node 2 Zenith docking port to remove and replace the planar reflector. EV2 will remove 3 bolts in order to remove the planar reflector. They will then put the new one in its place and bolt it back down. Before leaving the worksite, EV2 will take photos of the new reflector and its surrounding area. Meanwhile, EV1 will be working on the NICER payload located on the S3 outboard truss. EV1 will be installing wedge-shaped patches from the caddy to cover the damaged areas of the light detectors. Once complete, they will then take photos to confirm the configuration is correct. EV1 will then move to the AMS worksite to move a C2V2 cable to allow access to the payload. Once both crew members meet up at the AMS worksite, EV1 will ingress the truss to access the AMS patch panel and then remove the cloth covering. EV1 will then do fit checks to determine what connectors are easily accessible for future upgrades. Once complete with their tasks, both crew members will then go back to the airlock and ingress, marking the end of the RGA and reflector EVA.
That is an inside look at some of the tasks that are upcoming for today's U.S. Spacewalk number 91, featuring NASA astronaut and flight engineer Nick Hague and commander of Expedition 72, Suni Williams, as you are looking again live inside the equipment lock of the Quest airlock. That is Nick Hague across the field of view. You can see those red stripes that we'll be keeping an eye on from him throughout today's EVA. That's his indicator, those red stripes. Sunny Williams, this is an above view. You'll see the top of her helmet in the bottom right-hand corner as NASA astronaut Dawn Pettit and Butch Wilmore are helping those two prepare. They are their IV support systems, their spacewalk support systems inside the International Space Station. We're about 30 minutes away for a go for a depress as the two astronauts in their suits getting ready to finish up their pre-breathe as they continue to exercise and give movement to introduce more oxygen and pure oxygen into their systems to remove nitrogen and to avoid decompression and sickness. They're going over their final studies with Butch Wilmore in that shot before they will then be unhooked from their braces that are having them currently attached to the sidewalls there of the equipment lock, and they will have additional instrumentation placed on them, including the SAFER, the Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, in case that would be necessary during today's spacewalk. And with that go for decompress in about 29 minutes, a little bit north of that from now, that'll put us right on schedule for what should hopefully be an egress around 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Today's spacewalk is scheduled to be around 6.5 hours as they continue to adjust and prepare for those four main tasks that we were talking about and you saw the animation for as we look live inside of Mission Control in Houston. An ample crowd on hand during the handover period as Nicole McElroy and her VistaFlight team taking over for today's EVA. So far, everything nominal in preparation for today's EVA, the U.S. spacewalk number 91 and the 273rd spacewalk in support of space station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades. NASA astronaut Dawn Pettit working back behind the spacesuit of Nick Hague in this shot.